Origi! Yeah! He's doing it! Yeah! Unbelievable!
Hello and welcome to a very surprise edition of the Liverpool Way podcast. We had hoped to return during the international break with news of one or more contracts being agreed, but instead it's the quite outlandish confirmation of what many of us already suspected. Referees, and one in particular, fucking hate us. David Coote has been suspended by the PGMOL after a video emerged of him calling Liverpool shit and Jurgen Klopp a cunt from a few years back. Just so happened that Coote's involvement in decisions down the years, as recently as this Sunday, have somewhat hampered our ambitions to win titles. Dave, you asked if we wanted to do a quick emergency pod on this. Have you ever seen anything that's this outlandish yet totally unsurprising by the same token?
Yeah, that sums it up, really. Not remotely surprising, other than the fact, like, the most surprising aspect of it is, what the fuck is he doing saying that in front of a camera? And I don't care if he knows the person who's doing it or what. Why would it need to be filmed? You know, if that's a group of mates talking and someone's filming me talking, I'd be like, what are you doing? Switch your fucking camera off, you tit. You just, it's completely like, that's why initially you wondered if it was fake. Not because of what he said. That was not surprising, like, and to some extent it's understandable. I haven't even got like a massive problem with him not liking Klopp. I'm sure a lot of referees didn't like Klopp. Klopp didn't like them. You know, that's football. That's totally normal. But to actually like say it when you're being filmed is just, I thought, no one's that stupid. That maybe it is fake in some way. But then you start to think, well, hang on a minute. If someone's got like that kind of technology that they can do a fake that good, they're not wasting the time picking out David Coote saying stuff about Jurgen Klopp. You know what I mean? It's like, you'd be doing something a hell of a lot more like controversial than that. So, only surprising that he was so stupid to do it. Now, without speculating too much, there's probably other factors in play as to why he was in the mindset where he thought that was okay to do. But we won't go into that. That may well come out in the wash.
It's conjecture, isn't it?
Yeah,
at the moment.
His mate's
you
clearly
can make
drunk.
your own mind up. Yeah,
his mate's clearly drunk, but he's not slurring his words or anything, is he? He doesn't seem like he's drunk, but you've got to wonder why would you be acting in such a way? It's totally bizarre. But it's hard to even address this because there's so many layers to it. It's like, one, you talk about what he said and the reasons behind that. Two, like, why has he said it? What's going on there? Three, why is it being released now? Why is he being stitched up like this? Four, do other referees like think like this and say similar stuff publicly? Five, do they let that influence the decisions on the pitch? Then six, what does this mean for like other referees in terms of fans' faith in like the integrity of the game? It's already at an all-time low. Does this make it even more so? Not just Liverpool fans from other teams should be looking at this and thinking, well, he said that about Klopp, but who knows what else he was saying that's maybe not come out yet or not being videoed, because it won't just be Liverpool and Klopp who he's being asked his opinion on. He'll have been asked about lots of other stuff. So is this the tip of the iceberg? Then the next thing is, well, what happens now? You know, what do Liverpool do? Do Liverpool do anything, or do they just let it play out and say nothing? There's so many layers to it. It's hard to know where to even begin with it. I mean, you said at the start, least surprising thing ever, and it is. He's basically said the quiet part loud, and he said it on camera. But we knew this anyway. We knew that there's certain referees who have got like either a problem with Liverpool or they've got a problem with Jurgen Klopp. We knew it. We said it. You get told, oh no, they don't let stuff like that influence them. You know, you can't question the integrity of referees. Blah blah blah. Well, the integrity of refereeing is in the gutter. We've seen this now. It's out there for everyone to see. This fella has said what he said, and then he's been involved in Liverpool games. Now, then this is the most irritating part of it, is people now start to analyse every single decision that he's made, good or bad, relating to Liverpool, and then try to figure out, well, what's going on in his head there. Like, if you go, let's just take Saturday for example. Like, before this came out, the way I was talking about that, remember on the pod, and I was saying like, not so much that decision's like ruined the game for me, but that was the thing I couldn't get out of my head. I'm like, how? I can't just dismiss that. How's he not given that foul? It was weird. And I was not alluding to any of this stuff because I didn't know any of this stuff. I was talking about that incident, how it was genuinely staggering to me that a referee is like in a great position to see that and made the decision that he made. That's mind-blowing. How can that happen? Then this comes out and then you're like, well, is that why? And I'm not even saying it is, because we don't know. That's the thing. We don't know how much he's let this influence decisions that he's made. And that's the problem, is like, we're all going to look at different decisions and go, well, he's given this and he hasn't given that. And, you know, in the game, if he wanted to completely fuck us over, he could have given Villa at least one penalty. I'm not saying they were penalties. They weren't. But there's appeals for a penalty. He could have given them if his mindset was, I'm going to fuck Liverpool here. So I don't necessarily think that's the way it works. I think, like, we'll get into this more as we go, but I think a lot of it with referees, they go out there not with the intention of screwing over a particular team. That's not the primary focus when they go out. They go out and the referee in the game, and most of the game they'll referee it completely as they see it. But there will always be decisions in games where we'll do it ourselves. You look at a decision and you're not sure. You know, even when you see in replays, you're like, well, I can give that either way. I don't know. I could give it that way. I could give it that way. Whichever way I give it, there's going to be some people agree, some people won't agree. And then you have to make a choice of what you want to do. And I feel like it's in those moments that's when, like, this subconscious or even conscious bias will come out with certain decisions. And I feel like that's a lot more prevalent if you're on VAR rather than in the middle, in the heat of the game, and you're just acting on instinct, giving decisions. You know, you see something, you blow your whistle, yeah, that's a free kick, that's a throw into this team. You're in the game. When you're in a VAR room and then you get asked to make a call and you can see this can go either way, you know, I'm in control now. I can give what I want here. That's where I think there's a problem, where this bias will come in. And you can call it corruption. It depends on how you define it. We've had this conversation several times on the pod. Most people, when you think corruption, you think they've been paid off. I don't think that's the case at all, but there is corruption in terms of you can manipulate a decision to go which way you actually want it to go. And nobody will ever know you've done it unless you're stupid enough to tell people about it. That's not what he's done. He hasn't done that at all. He's just expressed a personal dislike for Klopp. And he didn't really say much about Liverpool and Scousers. It was the other guy who said it all. But it's guilt by association, isn't it? He was sat there next to him when he said it, and he didn't say, well, that's your view. I'm not saying that. There's none of that. So you've got to assume, okay, well, you're part of that as well. You didn't object to it, so presumably you think the same way he thinks.
Yeah, definitely. And the one other point to the long list of really good points that you made as well is that when did his bosses know about it, right? Because there's a long gap between him reffing us in the Premier League. He's gradually, it's about 4 years between games after that Burnley one where he had the row with Klopp, right? He doesn't ref us for ages after that, until Brighton last season actually. But he is involved in a bunch of our games in the League Cup and the FA Cup, and I think in those instances, isn't it the FA and the Football League that make those refereeing appointments rather than the PGMOL? Like the PGMOL decides which ref is going to ref those games, right? And then in the FA Cup and the League Cup, the refs are sort of determined by the Football League, and they select the refs probably with the blessing of the PGMOL and stuff like that. But it's very strange to me that there's almost a 4-year gap between him actually being an on-field official in one of our games after that incident. So one of the questions I have is, how long has this video been known about? Did he tell his bosses at the time that he'd fucked up in this pretty profound way, and they kept him away just in case the video came out? And then at some point he's been gradually eased back in. Like, this is one of those situations where we're going to need full transparency, but we're not going to get it, I don't think. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of sort of cloak and dagger stuff. The force of public opinion might require them to come out with like some stuff from this internal investigation that they're having, but it's going to be a little bit like the the Darren England incident after disallowing the goal against Spurs, Diaz's goal against Spurs, that we're never going to get like fully what we want from it, I don't think.
No, because if we don't want to go back to that too much, but what you just said there is relevant, because we only got, I think we got 90 seconds of audio around that, didn't we? Mm-hmm. We didn't get to the point. We should have heard the whole thing, so we knew when the referee on the pitch knew what had gone on, because there was conflicting stories about when that referee knew that a massive mistake had been made. They said he wasn't told till full time. Other people said he knew at half time. But there was no transparency there. They just let us have that little snippet of what happened while the incident was going on. And then there was no context for the way it came afterwards. So, yeah, they will just tell you the minimum that they can get away with telling you. And that's what will happen here. I don't know. I mean, obviously we don't know what's gone on. It is weird that there was a 4-year gap. Now, it could be because they knew that he said to them, look, this might surface potential problem down the line. Could be that. It could be he said to them, I don't want to referee Liverpool again. Like the fucking dog's abuse that I've got from Robertson and Trent and Klopp afterwards. I don't want that. I'm compromised because I've had problems with Klopp before. I don't like him. He doesn't like me. I would rather not be put in position to referee Liverpool games. That's a possibility. But then I would also think, well, how was Paul Tierney getting so many of our games? Because Klopp had a bigger problem with Tierney than he had with Coote. He actually said to Tierney, you're the only referee who I've got a problem with. So although he might not have liked Coote, he probably didn't view him in a different way than he did most other referees. It was Tierney was the one who Klopp had like the massive problem with and felt like Tierney was out to get us. Now, for a 4-year gap, it's weird that he's not been given any of our games, but he was on VAR for some of them, and there was some seriously controversial decisions made in those. Not all against us, it's not. And again, this is the thing that I think we need to stress. Referees aren't if you think a referee's got it in for your team, and there will be the case where that is definitely something. And again, this is not a Liverpool thing. This is just human nature. There will be certain referees who don't like certain teams because of players or manager, or they just don't like the team. They don't like the city. They don't like the fans. Whatever. That prejudice will exist in the minds of some referees. Now, those referees are not going to go out and give every single decision against that team, because you'd be found out immediately if you were doing that. You've got to pick and choose your moments when you do it. So highlighting things and say, well, David Coote gave this decision to Liverpool there. He gave this penalty and he didn't need to give that if he wanted to screw them over. Or, he's not given a penalty at the other end. That's going to happen. That's totally normal, because that's the way you would do it. If I wanted to manipulate a game in a certain way and I had the power to do it, I was in the VAR room, I'm not giving every decision against the team that I want to lose. I'm mixing it up a bit and I'm picking my spot. Like, this is the moment to do it. This decision can go either way. I'm not going to get people saying, wow, that's an outrageous decision. How can you give that? There's plenty of subjective calls during the game on big decisions, which you can go whichever way you want to go, and nobody thinks anything of it. So that's how you do it.
If I can just come in here, what counts against the greater good of the game and fans and the whole experience as well is the tribalism and the unwillingness to see that maybe your team wasn't worthy of that decision. Like, you had Villa fans who've come out of the woodwork since Saturday and saying, well, if David Coote was really biased against Liverpool, he didn't give us 2 clear penalties. And in my opinion, neither of those were fucking close to being penalties. But for them, they're 2 Stonewall penalties. Like, you can't remove that partiality to make a clear assessment on something that affects you too, by the way. Like, I'm sure there are weeks where and I'm sure there are refs that they think this bastard's got it in for us, and maybe there's a referee out there sat around with some cunt on a Saturday night talking about how much he fucking hates John McGinn. I can certainly see that eventuality, because I don't like him. He's a knobhead. So they have this shield because opposition fans can always point to the decisions that they didn't get.
Yep, absolutely. And as I say, a lot of it's subjective anyway. So you watch Match of the Day and two of the pundits will be split on whether it was a penalty or whether it wasn't a penalty, and you're always going to get that. And while that is the situation, and it's always going to be the situation because it's football and it's a subjective thing, referees can do that. And you know, I've spoke before about like Mark Clattenburg once he was on a podcast and he was talking about basically that, about 50-50 decisions, and he said like the biggest mistake that he made was he done a Merseyside derby at Goodison, and I think he said there was 5 big calls in the game and all 5 went Liverpool's way, and he said I'm judging them on their own merits at the time, and like that's what I thought, this is the right decision. He said, but the problem is there was 5 big calls, all of which I thought I judged them honestly and I thought I got the right call, but you can't do that. He said, you can't have 5 decisions like that. You know, you've got to even them out. And he's saying like the stuff that we all kind of have said for years, but it's like magicians with the magic circle. It's like, you know, you never tell how you do your tricks and stuff. Referees aren't supposed to admit this. It's supposed to be, you know, kept under wraps. But Clattenburg said from that game onwards, he says, I knew the mistake I made was I gave all 5 big calls to one team instead of mixing it up. But no, you just gave the decisions you thought were right in that. If for each individual decision, that was what you came up with. You thought, no, that's a penalty for Liverpool. That's not a penalty. That's a red card. Whatever it was. And it just so happens that they all came down on the side of one team. Evertonians were furious. Clattenburg didn't get to referee at Goodison for a long while after that. And he said, like, he learned from that to make sure you split them. You know, you even it out whenever possible. So the idea that referees are calling everything straight down the middle and making a decision based on what they see, it's not the case. There's a lot of other things that come into play, which is why, and that's fine. You know, that's fine. They're not robots. They are people, and you are subject to certain, you know, human flaws, or not even necessarily flaws, but just like, you know, human traits where like you will do certain things at certain moments. That's fine. You can't expect any different. But when you've got someone actually going on camera and saying what he said, and then he's been involved in games involving that team, they have to be held to a much higher standard than anyone else. So, like, people who are saying he shouldn't lose his job over it, and it's like, oh, you know, we just want to cancel everyone these days. Like, no, this is not a guy who works in a bank or on a building site who's saying Jurgen Klopp's a cunt. That's fine. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, people all around the country can think that, and that's fine. They're entitled to express it, no problem whatsoever, because their job is not having an influence on football matches. But for a referee to have those views, you can't stop them having those views. But you like to just bury it and just, you know, give them some sort of benefit of the doubt and think, no, you know, maybe they rise above all that. But when you've got one actually saying what he said, and then he's been involved in contentious decisions that have gone against us, you can't have it, because, like, we'll get to this later about what should happen to him, but really, how can he come back and not just referee Liverpool games, how can he referee any game that might have some sort of bearing on our league position? Because even if he's learnt his lesson from it and he's gonna do his absolute best and not let anything influence his judgment, doesn't matter. It's all about the optics now. So anytime he gives us,
people will think you go the other way as well.
Well, there's
like,
that
people
too.
Say, always trying to make up for it.
Exactly.
You know?
So you've got it both ways. So like, there's a contentious call. It can go either way. Which, as we know, a lot of decisions in games, you're not gonna have like 100% of people agreeing with the decision. So, you know, he's got to make a call. Do I give it that way or do I give it that way? If he gives it in our favour, people are going to say, oh, look at that, he's trying to make it up to them, he's trying to show that he's not biased. If he gives it against us, we're going to be like, look, that's because he hates us, we know he hates us, he said it before. It's not tenable. It's not a tenable position, and referees have to be held to a higher standard than the average person, like judges as well. You know, there's certain professions where you've got to rise above human pettiness, that the rest of us we're allowed to have those, like that pettiness and spite and bearing grudges. We're allowed to have all of those prejudices. If you're in that position, you can't have that, or you've at least got to be seen to not have that. And as soon as he said what he said in front of a camera, there's no way back for me. But we'll get to that, because I don't think he will be sacked, but we'll get to that. as we go.
I think he will be. I think we will come into this. I think he'll have to go, and then the PGMOL will be able to carry on as they are. Like say, we've spotted this, we've made the example, standards will improve, and they'll carry on. Because if he doesn't, I think it brings their whole organisation under severe threat of having to be completely disbanded and rebuilt from the ground up.
Well, no, I agree with that. So we may as well do this now then. I agree with what you're saying. Now, I think what people have not really thought about, and it only came to me last night. I was talking to my dad, and I was like, hang on a minute. Like, if I'm David Coote now, and they try to sack me, well, there's two things. First of all, what you said earlier about how long have they known. If they did know about this back in the day, and they kept him away from Liverpool games for 4 years, that means he's already been punished for this. And if they tried to sack him for it now, just because it's come out, when they were already aware of it, he'd have a case for unfair dismissal, because he'd be like, I've already been punished for it. You knew about this. You can't now sack me because someone's released the video. So the legal aspect there would be a problem. But I'm not saying
that's easy enough to get around. Pay him off, NDA.
Yeah, well, it depends on how much they pay him, I suppose. So there is that. But then the other side of it is, I would be willing to bet any amount of money that the refs have got a group WhatsApp chat, and there will be all kinds of stuff in there, incriminating stuff for people saying different things. And if David Coote's got the screenshots of like what's being said in that, if I'm him, I'm saying to Howard Webb, unless like he just decides, you know what, I want me payoff, let me just get out, I don't need the hassle. If he actually wants to carry on refereeing, I'm saying to Howard Webb, well, if you sack me, that's fine. But I know all of these other referees who've said similar stuff to what I've said about all different managers, or or other people in football, whatever. Yeah. I'll just release it. I'll let everybody see, like the group text from the WhatsApp group. So he knows where the bodies are buried. So if he wants to be awkward about it, I think it would be really difficult for them to just sack him. Now, he may well be okay with just getting a payoff and moving on with his life. Who knows? I don't know. But I don't think it would be as straightforward as they could just say, no, that's not acceptable. You're out the door. I think he's got too much dirt on people, because he will have. Because you know that referees, like that, what's his name? The Peter Walton tit. He was talking about Coote, and he said, I'm a bit surprised by this, because he's not really like, he said some of the referees are like proper lads with like lads humour, and like, if he said for them to be saying stuff like that would be more natural with their personality. He said because David Coote's like quite reserved and not really like that at all. So that just made me think, well, what are all of these other fellas saying? All these other in the group chat. You can imagine it, can't you? You can imagine like the shit that they're talking. Lads in a group chat.
By the same token, I think that's why the words seem to come so easily from his mouth. And when we can talk about the other factors that may have been involved then or not, but it flows from his mouth really easy, because I think that's probably the culture that he's in. It's probably the chats that he has with his fellow professionals. It's almost like comes as easy as me and you sat around in the pub or on this podcast or wherever, like calling Gary Neville a fucking mank cunt, right? Like it doesn't feel like an odd thing for him to say, because it's probably part of the culture that they have this, they have this rapport with their fellow refs where everything is in a circle of trust, and they can say what they want and they can get out their grievances, and it's probably the pervading narrative that they're allowed to say that in those circumstances.
Well, it's like the mafia, isn't it? You code of silence and all that, and until it isn't. Until someone decides, like, I don't really want to go to jail for like the rest of my life. So yeah, I'll give you dirt on everyone else. I'll testify. So you already had, like, last year we saw Clattenburg take that job at Nottingham Forest, and the next thing he's accusing Stuart Atwell of being a Luton fan who's like trying to fuck Forest over. It wasn't even a Luton game. It was an Everton game, I think. Stuart Atwell was involved in a game that was involving Forest relegation rivals, and they're like, it might have been a Forest game actually, I don't know, but their attitude was, you're doing that to help Luton because you're a Luton fan and Luton's in a relegation battle. So Clattenburg's like, he's broke the code. You know, referees are not supposed to be doing stuff like that to each other. But Clattenburg, you know, he basically went like Pat Garrett, didn't he? And he's like, you know, just shafting Billy the Kid. It's like that's what he did by taking that job at Forest, and then he starts like blowing the whistle on all like little things that referees say and do, and you know the whole like poacher turn gamekeeper thing. So you might get that now. You know, they may well have a like the little circle of trust where they're all saying stuff. In fact, I'm 100% sure that you will have that. You know, because that's human nature. That's how it will be.
And it'll be how they cope as well. Like, you know, you lean on somebody that is in a similar situation to you to empathise with the plight that you feel that you're suffering.
But the problem is you can't leave receipts. So you can't be saying stuff in a group chat, and you can't be allowing people to film you saying it. It's like if the referees go for it, like, you know, an international break, and they have like, let's all meet up and you know, have a night out and stuff. They can all go there and they can all say whatever they want about different managers and players who they've had to deal with, who've given them a hard time. Totally understandable as long as it's kept between them. But once it gets out there and people see the truth laid bare, you know, because there's so many people in denial over it, which is, it's laughable to me. Like, you know, a lot of ex-players, I'm going to single this guy out, not because he's worse than anybody else, but because I've heard him saying stuff like this quite a lot, is Danny Murphy. Danny Murphy will always say, no, I refuse to believe that like there's any of this stuff going on. You know, they're all honest. They all try to call the game like as they see it. They're not getting influenced by all of this stuff. And I'm like, Danny, you're fucking in cloud cuckoo land. These are human beings with the same flaws that the rest of us have got. In the history of like other sports, in this sport, in other countries, you look at some of the stuff that's gone on. Why would it not be going on? It would be more surprising if this kind of thing was not going on. Yeah. But the people are in denial over it because they don't want to think. Because without integrity of the game, it's like, well, what are we watching? You know, if referees are out deliberately influencing the outcome of games, and then you've got seasons that are decided by like 1 point, and that can be traced directly to a referee given a particular decision, and you think that referee's deliberately fucked us over. Because we've had it, seasons where we've missed out on the title by a point, and you look at big decisions that went a certain way, and it's hard not to be bitter about it and think, that wasn't legit, you know, there's something, but nobody wants to believe that, because otherwise, everything that we're watching, it's a total fraud. It's like, you know, there's no substance to it. It's like you're wasting your time going and watching, investing in these games when this is going on. You know, mistakes are one thing, but if referees are deliberately doing stuff like that, it's a problem. And I've said before, I've said to you, I've said it on the pod a few times, I always go back to that Netflix documentary with the NBA refs. And this has proved exactly what that guy was saying. I'm not talking about this guy in particular who, it started off fairly harmless. He was giving information to bookies about different refs, how they view different teams, all stuff like that. And then he ended up getting in too deep and he was taking money to fix games and that. I'm not talking about when it gets to that point, because that's just like one rogue fella doing something, you know, like illegal that he's being caught and punished for. It was when it was the other stuff that like the not as serious stuff. That was my problem, was when he's saying, like, you know, you've got this referee saying to bookies, this ref's got like the Knicks game this weekend and he hates Pat Riley, so get your money on the other team. When stuff like that's going on, like I immediately was thinking, well, that's got to be going on here. It's got to be. It's got to be going on in every sport, because these are human beings. It's not like the robots who can just completely detach themselves from that kind of stuff. And then you get this video from David Coote, and it's like, there you go. That's exactly what this NBA guy was saying, how referees feel about like certain coaches, players, whatever.
Yeah. I think when it comes to people like Danny Murphy and his refusal to believe it, there's the issue of your investment in the game and the, you know, the unwillingness to see that it might be compromised, but also there's this sense of British exceptionalism that comes into it as well. Oh, couldn't happen here, you know, not amongst us civilized, fair-playing Brits. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, that pervading narrative sort of can blind people at times into sort of overlooking or missing what could be corruption or what could otherwise be wrongdoing. I think that kind of plays into it as well. And Danny Murphy has always struck me as somebody who's a little bit like that. But he's also struck me as a total simpleton as well. So, what can you do about that?
He is a bit, but like he's played, he's been on the pitch with these referees. He knows how it works, and it's like, for him to then be like, just in total denial about it. I'm like, maybe it's because he doesn't want to believe it, because he would think back to his whole career then and think, well, I thought that was just a bad decision. Maybe it wasn't. So that's why I get why like he would be in denial over it. But I just don't know how you can rule these things out. And then even after you see like a referee saying what he said, to then say, oh yeah, but that doesn't mean he let it influence his judgment when he refereed Liverpool games. It's like, come on, how naive have you got to be? This is, it would be more surprising if he didn't allow that to influence him. And surprising, not even the word. It would be shocking if he didn't allow it to influence him. If that's how he feels, because like I say, it's like if that's me, if you put me in charge of a Man City game, I'm not going to give Man City the benefit of any doubt whatsoever. And it doesn't matter how many little jollies they pay for me to go over to the United Arab Emirates and stuff. They can do whatever they like. I'm going to be screwing them whenever I can. So why would that be any different? Because we think that these people, we're going to hold them to a higher standard. They've got to be better than like the average person. And it's like, well, they're not going to be. Some of them will be. Some of them will take the profession absolutely like seriously, and they'll know full well how important it is to be impartial, and they'll go to call everything as honestly as they possibly can. But don't tell me that all of them feel like that, because they absolutely don't, because they're human beings, and human beings are flawed.
For all we know as well, the long gap, you kind of mentioned this before, the long gap between him refereeing our games. He might have said that I can't be doing with them, I can't be doing with Klopp and the hassle I get from him, keep me away from them for a while. He also might have said it for the purpose of, like,
I can't be trusted.
I can't be trusted because my feelings are so strong on this front that I don't want to be anywhere near it, because... and also the knowledge, maybe his bosses didn't know, but he's obviously woken up the next morning and gone, fuck, what have I done here? I need to be kept away from them. And, you can tell that he knows, he's self-aware enough to know in that follow-up video that, why you would film another video saying this can't go anywhere. Like what that does.
He didn't need to, he could have said that. Yeah, he didn't need to say it while he was being filmed saying it.
If he was going to film another video, it would have been like, I don't mean that, I'm just messing around, that, but he didn't. He said, he reaffirmed his feelings by saying, look, this can't go anywhere. And
how do you reckon that played out? Do you reckon he's gone, hey, get your camera back on, puts the camera on, that last video can't go anywhere? What? And you know what, the other thing, we haven't even mentioned it yet, which was utterly mental, when he pulls up like a Getty Images picture up on his phone of him as the fourth official stood next to Milner and Klopp.
Yeah.
He had that ready at the time. There was no pause between like where he was looking for the photo. He went, Milner's all right. And then he pulls up the photo. Look, here we are. He's all right, Milner.
And he's not calling me a cunt here.
It's just absolutely just batshit mental. I can't get my head around it. It's the Milner stuff. That was probably like the worst thing in the whole video, was the way he pulled up this like Getty Images thing of like him stood there with his mask on next to Milner and Klopp as he's the fourth official. Oh, it's just utterly weird.
That keys us into some timeline stuff as well, because in the video they talk about, like, first of all, he should be getting a fucking government penalty for breaking social distancing laws.
Yeah.
Partygate, but for referees. But it leads us into the timeline. We can, because of the rawness of the feelings, we can probably suggest that it's sometime during lockdown after that Burnley game, which
it was after the Villa game. It was the 7-2. It was after that. It looks like it was the night of that, because when he said, "What did you think of Liverpool?" and he went, "Liverpool was shit." It was the Villa game. It was filmed just after that. Yeah. So it was, I think, not that long after the Burnley game. And then
matter of months, right?
And it's before. Yeah, it's got to be before the Everton game, because Virgil played in that 7-2.
Okay.
So then the Goodison game comes after that.
Right. So it's immediate. It's in the immediate sort of beforehand of the Everton game, right? Which is one of the most contentious ones of all.
Yeah.
If you're going to point to any of the games where it could have been,
check was the official line. He forgot to check for the red card. He was so preoccupied with the offside. And what nobody really mentions either is, do you remember the Hendo goal at the end of that game that got disallowed?
Yeah, the Mane offside.
And it was so weird, like with the lines. Remember at the time everyone was like, we didn't see the lines, and it looks like the lines were drawn after the ball had been played. It was manipulated. Nobody thought that was offside. That was, of all like the close VAR calls with offside where lines have been drawn, that was the most egregious one I can remember. Where it was like, no, that's not offside. How have you manipulated the lines to make that look offside when it isn't? So we were all suspicious about that at the time anyway. And now you're looking at that and going, oh, right, okay, so this is at the height of his beef with Klopp, if you like. You know, he had like real negative feelings towards Klopp, and then you get those two incidents in the same game. Now, where like the waters are a bit muddied is there's no escaping from the fact that he is really shit. You know, he's a bad referee. There's lots of decisions, not even involving us, just in other games he's done. He's got a whole career, a track record of just like inexplicably just shit decisions. So how much of it is him just the fact that he's not very good, and how much of it is him deliberately doing decisions like to make it go the way he wants, and only he knows that.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think the next few weeks are going to look like?
It depends on him. If he wants to make it difficult for them to sack him, I think he's definitely got the ammunition to do that. But he may well just be. The thing is, there may be other stuff about him that he doesn't want getting out, so he may well just cut his losses and just say, okay, pay me off, and I'll go and find another job, which is what should happen.
He won't want to throw his mates under the bus either, will he? Like he won't want to sort of.
It depends if they're his mates. He might not be in like the popular kids crowd with the refs. He might be like the nerd who's on the outside and the butt of people's jokes. We don't know, do we? He does kind of come across a little bit like that. So we don't know what the dynamic is within that group, you know. So we can only speculate on all of this, but I don't think it's as straightforward as just saying, sack him and protect ourselves and move on. They may not be able to do that. I think it's more likely that there'll be like a lengthy suspension. He maybe sits out this season, and they'll come out with some stuff about, they might say like he's got a drink problem or a drug problem or something like that, and we're going to rehabilitate. There could be any narrative like that where he needs rehabilitation and then reintroducing at a later date. It could be, you know, that's what I would expect, something like that, where he's back refereeing this time next year or whatever. But I mean, realistically, why doesn't he just say, you know what, I'll just go and referee in Saudi. He'll get good money. He's away from all of this shit. They'd be quite happy to get a Premier League referee over there refereeing. Yeah. That would be like the smartest thing for him to do now, is to just say, yeah, I'm done with the Premier League. This is not really tenable for me to stay, but I'm a Premier League referee. I can go and work in another country.
You can subscribe to the Liverpool Way podcast on all the major platforms, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon or Podbean. Just search for the Liverpool Way, leave us a review and hit subscribe to automatically receive all new episodes. You can also head to liverpoolway.co.uk and grab a TLW season ticket for just £3 a month. There's tons of exclusive content, including match reports from every Liverpool game, weekly Premier League roundups, the TLW diary and access to the members-only forum. Lastly, you can follow us on social media at The Liverpool Way on Twitter and at The Liverpool Way TLW on Instagram and Facebook.
I mean, what do you think's going to happen?
I think the status quo will largely remain intact. I think there'll be a narrative spun about perhaps some of the things that you mentioned. He'll go quietly away with a big payoff, and thus the PGMOL will be able to continue pretty much as it is. There'll never be any real oversight while Webb is in charge, because it's the same as the fucking police. Like, it's only when the government gets involved that they're ever punished for anything, which is very rare because the government lackeys, not to get too far into that. But yeah, I don't think there'll be much change other than we won't see him again. But I think there's grounds if the clubs took it far enough and if the fans united, which will never happen, to overthrow that whole organisation and get something different, something new, something independently regulated, perhaps. But I don't think that's going to happen for a second.
That's what should happen, but
yeah.
I totally agree. I don't think the clubs have got the appetite to do it. I think Wolves probably would. Forest probably would, because their owner's an absolute head the ball who's massively got it in for them. Rightly so, but not that he's got justification for it. I mean, he's right.
Even a broken clock's right twice a day, right?
His reasons for it are not really valid, but I mean, the overall sentiment, he is right, like, to want big changes made. But, you know, to me, like, the first thing that needs to be done, and it won't be done while Howard Webb's there, but if I could say to Howard Webb what he needs to do to change it, other than fuck off and never come back, the most obvious thing for me, which would pacify, not completely pacify us, but it would help, and I think Arsenal fans as well, this is something that they want. Chelsea as well. Chelsea are absolutely adamant that Anthony Taylor has got it in for them. Chelsea, like, constantly talking about Anthony Taylor screwing them over. So, you know, that probably comes down to the fact that Chelsea have been competing for stuff against Manchester clubs, and then they get Anthony Taylor in charge of a game and decisions aren't going their way, and they're like, well, that's because, you know, you're a mank and they're benefiting from it. Arsenal are constantly complaining about the Northern Mafia referees, but they're actually thinking it benefits us. And it's like, no, it's not like fucking Scouse Mafia referees. It's like most of them are around the Manchester area. Now, the problem is, all of these mank referees supposedly support non-league teams, or like Bury, Altrincham, or all teams like that. And we all know that that's bollocks. And how difficult would it be to go and talk to, like, school friends of Anthony Taylor and Chris Kavanagh and Paul Tierney, speak to like people who knew them when they were kids growing up, and say, who did he support? How difficult would that be? So they either know who they support, or they've just accepted when they've said, oh, yeah, I support Altrincham, I don't support City or United. They've just accepted that, or they know who they support and they're just using that either way. Yeah. Now, even if those referees are completely impartial and call it exactly how they see it, and they don't let that influence them, it doesn't matter, because it's the optics. We will look at that and go, hang on, this is a Manchester referee who's just give that decision against us, and who benefits from that? Well, City benefits or United benefits. So as long as that's going on, you're always going to have people like thinking there's a conspiracy going on and referees are deliberately screwing teams over. So Arsenal are thinking that because they've been going for the title with City the last couple of years, and then decisions go against them from referees, whether it's Michael Oliver, who everyone knows is in City's pocket, or if it's Manchester-based referees. And Arsenal fans are looking at that going, that's not right. These are Manchester-based referees giving decisions against us that are benefiting Manchester City. So we've had that as well. We know, like, Arsenal fans are going totally overboard about it, which is why people aren't taking them seriously now. But there is a point to what they're saying, even if, like, they've gone totally off the reservation with it. There is, like, an underlying point. You've got to stop this. You've got to have, like, referees. And I don't care whether it's like that referee supports a particular team. I would go beyond that. It's not just that. I want to know, who does your wife support? What about your parents, siblings? I wouldn't go any further than that. I wouldn't go down the road of like cousins and stuff like that. But I need to know who their immediate family support, because you can't tell me that that's not got an influence. You know,
he's going to get earache when he gets home.
Exactly. So, you know, you cannot have someone refereeing a game that impacts the team who his wife supports, and then he's going home and his wife's like giving him a hard time. Like, that was never a penalty. What are you fucking doing? You know, you've cost City like 3 points today. Or you can't have that, you know. So if there's any connection to those teams, they can't referee those teams, and they can't referee the teams who are rivals at that particular time. Whether, you know, if we're like 15 points behind, it doesn't matter. I'm not bothered. But if we're going for a title with City, I do not want Manchester referees involved in City games or in our games. I also don't want Michael Oliver, which is a totally separate point entirely. But you see what I mean? It's like, you can't have that conflict. People are always going to be suspicious about it. And there's two referees that I know of Rob Jones and Jared Gillett, who've both said they're Liverpool fans, so they can't referee Liverpool games. But they were involved in the Arsenal game the other week when Saliba got sent off. So Arsenal fans are now like kicking off over that, going, that's like they're doing it to benefit Liverpool. But you know, most people have looked at that and said, no, that is a sending off. So they've not done anything that they shouldn't have done. But I also understand, as an Arsenal fan, I would be looking at that and going, well, we've seen similar incidents where there hasn't been a red card. Why is that one a red card? Mm-hmm. You can say it's right, but it's not 100%. It's like there's still a subjectivity.
Like the Jota one the same weekend.
Exactly. Yeah, so there is like a subjectivity element in it. It's not 100% a red card. It's, you know, maybe it's like 60% a red card or whatever, but there will be times when that's not given. So Arsenal fans will look at that and go, Liverpool supporting referee, Liverpool supporting VAR, and they've sent one of our players off in a game, and Liverpool go above Arsenal, or we may have already been above Arsenal, can't remember. It's not the point. We're like neck and neck with them at the time. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at that and going, that's not right. And I actually agree, even if like they've not been influenced by who they support, the fact that they're in charge of that game and Liverpool will like benefit from an Arsenal defeat and they're Liverpool fans, you can't have that. Appoint somebody else. There should be like, you know, you send Jared Gillett.
It becomes a scheduling nightmare then, doesn't it? Like
to some extent, it's just, but you've still got like, you know, what all it means is like the so-called top referees who get the top games. That's not going to be the case, and you're going to end up getting like that fucking John Brooks dickhead maybe doing more of your big games.
Which is another fucking kettle of fish altogether.
No one wants that, but at least it's like, well, he's just shit. I'm not thinking he's doing it because he supports like City or United or whatever. And I'm just using John Brooks off the top of my head. You know, there's other referees who, you know, it could be like Madley, Andy Madley, could be him getting more bigger games or whatever. And they're not great, don't get me wrong. But are the others? You know, is it like Michael Oliver's supposedly the top referee? Would you want Michael Oliver in charge of a big game? He's literally I would have David Coote in charge of our games before I'd have Michael Oliver if there's a title, you know, at stake. Honestly, I would. He's the last person on the list of referees who I would want. For the City game in a couple of weeks' time, give me David Coote. Even now, after what he said, give me David Coote over Michael Oliver in a game like that. Obviously, that's not realistic because people would say Coote's going to be too scared to give decisions against Liverpool, whatever. But I'll take Anthony Taylor, I'll take Paul Tierney, I'll take any of them over Michael Oliver for that game. But by and large, I do think you've got to factor that in. Who's that referee? Who does he really support? Not who's he telling you he supports. Who does he really support? Is like his immediate family support? And then take it from there.
I think if you go to those lengths, though, it undermines the whole thing. It's almost a tacit admission that there is bias, right? If you go through every ref's past with a fine-tooth comb and see if he's ever been to see, you know, he's ever sat on the cop or whatever, like, you're basically, the gig's up then, you're admitting that they...
not necessarily. Like, I know what you mean. Or are you
just trying to avoid the perception then?
Exactly, it's the optics. You know, you've got to avoid, like, people are going to have a valid point when they're saying, like, Manchester referee in a Liverpool game when we're up against Manchester teams for the title, you can't have that. So you take, even if you're not admitting it by taking them off the game. You're not admitting, oh well, he can't be unbiased when he's refereeing this game. But you're like, look, we want to remove, like the optics aren't great here. People are going to look at it and think that's not right. We don't want to put the referee in that situation. Because it's got to be difficult for the referee as well. Because even if you're trying to call it down the middle, you're fully aware. Like Anthony Taylor is fully aware when he's refereeing Liverpool games. The crowd are chanting like, you mank bastard. And that Anthony Taylor is aware that every decision he makes, people are going to look at it and go, you've done that because you're a mank. Or you've not given that because people think you're going to be biased, you're going too far the other way. So it's a minefield for them as well. And I haven't got a problem with Anthony Taylor, by the way. You know, Anthony Taylor's refereed us at Old Trafford a few times, and he's been good. He's called it down the middle. Now, United fans hate Anthony Taylor. United fans are convinced Anthony Taylor's a City fan. I don't know, but this is what I'm saying. You know, so if you've got a Manchester referee in charge of a Manchester derby, you can't have that. Because he's going to have like friends and family, like maybe more on one side than the other. You can't have it, and that's where this is the position that they've put themselves in by constantly doing this, and that is the biggest reason why a lot of fans have got no faith in the impartiality of referees, is because of that. And that's the first thing that they should be fixing, is that referees who are doing games have got no connection to the teams involved or the teams who are going to be directly affected by it.
Just to come back to Coote for a sec, what do you think Liverpool should do about this?
Nothing. Because if you do something, you run the risk of pissing the referees off even more. There's no benefit. What can we do? You know, you talk about legal things and, like, you know, he's maybe cost us a title. But if you try to start like proving that and wanting to sue for compensation, there's nothing we can do about it, especially because we won't have the support of everybody else. Look what happened after the Diaz goal. We should have gone after them fucking massively. Yeah. And as soon as we put a letter out a couple of days later, which wasn't even a particularly scathing letter, we wrote to them, didn't we? We wrote to the Premier League, and what happened? Gary Neville come out and fucking slaughtered us, and other people were doing it. And it's like, oh, look, the Scousers fucking crying it in again. Just get on with it. Bad decisions happen. And it's like, that was the moment. What happened in that game had never been seen before in this game. It's the worst decision that's ever been made in the history of English football. What happened there was that, it was the biggest miscarriage of justice on field that we've seen. And yet, we got no
certainly
support.
In terms of avoidability, because of the nature of the mistake.
Yeah.
Like the you know, it wasn't a subjective call. It was a communication issue,
and it could have been rectified at the time.
Yeah.
And they refused to rectify it. They hid behind red tape. Oh, you can't restart the game. Fuck off. A week later, the game was restarted for something similar. You know, they stopped after the restart and went back for something. That happened like a week or two later. I think it was Leicester. It was a Leicester game. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So they hid behind that. But that was the moment when everybody should have been behind us. You put your rivalry aside. Everyone's got to be behind that. And we were left on our own, where it was like, oh, look, crying Scousers, victims again. Just get on with it. What about this decision that went against us last year? What about this? And it's like, you know what? This is why nothing will change. Because I remember it was like West Ham fans were really vocal about that. Going on about like an offside goal
big
from
with one of them, didn't you?
There was an offside that we scored. I think Ox was offside. He was like a few yards off, and he was so close to the linesman that the linesman kind of misjudged it. He didn't see. You know, sometimes when a player's like right there in front of you, and he got distracted and he got it wrong, and he was about 3 yards offside. The goal shouldn't have counted. And we had West Ham fans talking about that from a couple of years earlier, comparing it with what happened to us. And it's like, what are you bringing up? Everyone's had like bad decisions like that. This is not that. This is something completely different. Why are you bringing up all this whataboutery shit? But that's what you're up against, and that's why nothing will change. Because we've seen it now. Arsenal fans are trying to make this about them. Everton fans have been on trying to make it about them. The only fans who you never hear from is Man City, because they've never been on the receiving end of anything. Like they only get good decisions. I'm not even joking. Well, when can City bring something up and go, oh, look at this, this was disgusting, this happened to us? They're Homer Simpson backing off through the hedge whenever these discussions take place.
There's been a few in games against us. You know, there was the Trent handball situation that we ended up scoring from.
Handball. It was ball to hand.
But it's not. It's still something that they were aggrieved with.
But it's not.
You know, there was the goal they had disallowed just before. There was a goal they had disallowed before Salah scored in the year when we were shit. We won 1-0 at Anfield, and I think it might have been the title, the year after we won the title, when everybody thought that was going to sort of lift us back up into contention. Or maybe, no, I think it was the year after, because there were fans in the ground and we had a poor start or whatever. But no, it was the year that everybody dropped off at the same time. It was the year that Hendo and Fabinho and the whole midfield collapsed.
Yeah,
but there is stuff, Dave. Yeah, but
but that's what I'm saying. If these are the things that you're highlighting, these are not egregious calls,
because they're against us, you know. But there will be
I'm
stuff
watching Match
that
of the
you're
Day
just
every
overlooking.
week for the roundups, and I'm telling you, there's the things that City complain about are like nothing. They're just like standard stuff that happens to everyone. There's never any like say for example, It's not about being biased here, because I've seen Man United getting some horrific decisions against them. Stuff that would never have happened when Ferguson was there, by the way. But you see decisions going against United, and so United fans are complaining about stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like the penalty at West Ham the other week, that was disgusting. That was that was David Coote, who's the total innocent victim there. Did you see last night the Howard Webb thing on that?
No, I didn't.
So I haven't seen Howard Webb talking about it, but I've seen like someone posted the audio of the referees talking. So David Coote sees that and gives nothing, rightly so, because it's never a penalty. And Michael Oliver pulls him to the screen, which is really weird because of the whole clear and obvious, and it's got to be like an obvious mistake. And it wasn't like a mistake at all. It was the right decision. Michael Oliver calls him to the screen, and you're listening to the audio of it. And I felt sorry for David Coote. And this is even after he said what he said, and I know he said what he said. I'm watching this last night and going, I felt sorry for him at the time when I watched it on Match of the Day. But then hearing the audio of what was getting said to him, I felt even more sorry for him, because he was bullied into giving that penalty by like the senior referee, Michael Oliver.
So what was said?
So Coote's looking at it, and he's going, so what are we seeing then? And Oliver's going, it's knee-to-knee contact, and De Ligt's gone in late, and he's caught Danny Ings. And the uncertainty in Coote's voice, he's watching it, and he's going, knee-to-knee contact, okay. And he's like, and has Ings got control of the ball at any point? And Oliver's going, no, he's approaching the ball, and there's knee-to-knee contact. De Ligt's come in high, and he's caught him, and it's a penalty. And you can hear, and Coote's going, so knee-to-knee, right. And he may as well have said, no, come on, that's just not what I'm seeing here. But he was too scared, because it's Michael Oliver, who's like Billy Big Bollocks, and all the other referees are all like intimidated by him. So Coote's like, okay, and he turns around, and his face is as white as a sheet, and he's given a decision that he does not want to give under any circumstances, because he knows that's not a penalty. And so I felt sorry for him. But like, the weird thing about that is, I was saying before about you never get decisions where it's like 100% of people are saying, no, that's the decision to be made. There's always like an element of debate. I haven't seen anybody saying that that's a penalty, even like though it's Man United and we all love seeing them get bad decisions against them. I've not seen anyone saying, yeah, that's a penalty, because it wasn't.
Because they're no threat to us.
But the only person who's seen that as a penalty was Michael Oliver, the so-called best referee in the country. And even all of the pundits looking at it going, no, that's not a penalty. Howard Webb last night has said, no, he's the VAR's been too preoccupied on the De Ligt's leg and the knee-to-knee, and he's not looked at the overall incident and the fact that it's not a penalty. He's like, that's one that should never have gone to an on-field review. They should have stuck with the decision. So everybody has said that that's wrong. But how is like the so-called top referee in the country making that call? It just doesn't add up to me. Absolutely bizarre. I'm not even sure how I got onto that one there, but yeah, I'm saying about Man United getting decisions against them. We've had like some ridiculous ones. Arsenal have had some ridiculous ones. City have had some normal ones, but all the ridiculous ones have been in their favour. That's why their fans have got no grievance. They're pulling up like petty shit, which could go either way. Like the Trent handball. The fact that you brought that up is because that's the biggest one that they've ever made a big deal of. And it's ball to hand. It's not a penalty. It's absolutely not a penalty. But they're like,
subjective though, isn't it? We would look at that and have a different opinion on it if they went up the other end and
that's
scored.
Hardly ever given as
you
a penalty.
You would, Dave. Come on.
It's not though, but like that's hardly ever given. You do this all the time,
and we both do it. Like you will find a way to justify the decision in a manner that benefits us. Like
in a lot of cases,
you do it all the time.
But all honesty here, that is hardly ever given. That one on Trent, that decision is hardly ever given. The only surprising thing is that it wasn't given because it was City. But more often than not, that's waved away as nothing. It's rare that penalties are given for that kind of thing.
Okay. Coming back to the point on what we should do about it, I don't think that we should be absolutely silent. I think there's a balance that can be struck with us maybe just acknowledging it by saying like Liverpool Football Club are shocked and surprised to witness the comments of the referee David Coote. We'll be closely following the investigation and seeking answers from the parties involved. Just something like that, just to show that we're aware of it and that it's not something that's going to be, we'd have to go banging doors down, but we shouldn't let it pass without
what
saying
does
a
it
word.
achieve though? I don't know. I don't really think we need to do that. What is going to be interesting, at some point Klopp's going on Instagram and he's going to make a joke about it all. There's no way he's going to let that pass without comment. Klopp is surely going to do something, and it's going to be like really funny when he does.
Fair, agreed. What else do we need to touch
Do you know
on
what he
here?
should do? He should he should just like get a video where he's sat next to Pete Kravitz and like someone else is videoing it. What do you think of David Coote? Yeah, just recreate it or something. But yeah, I don't think Liverpool will say anything. I don't know what you can say. It's not going to change anything. And if anything, I wouldn't want to alienate referees even more. This is like such bad timing, like the way things are going for us. Everything's going great. We don't need it. We don't need the heat and the attention. So I would say nothing. Don't risk getting other referees pissed off about it. Things are going well, and let's just not rock the boat and just see how it plays out.
It's a bit of just. I mean, perhaps it's a good thing that it's come during the international break, because the narrative moves so fast these days that there's a decent chance that there'll be something else, you know, that takes precedence by the time they come back and start doing press conferences before the Southampton game, which is still like 10 days away. So the heat's not going to be as much strong, but Slot doesn't need this, does he? It's like he already gets asked about Klopp stuff far too much.
Yeah.
Like he's just trying to focus on the job in hand. What happened in the past is significant to him for some extent, but this isn't at all. This doesn't concern him in the slightest. You know, it's not in the large part a lot of the players that he's working with now. So, you know, it's just as you say, it's an unwanted distraction that we could do without, and the turmoil of it is not fun.
Because he will get asked about it, and I think he'll just say it's not really anything to do with me. I don't want to talk about it. I've got no comment on it. That's what he should say, because there's nothing to be gained by him commenting on it. Like you know,
perfectly within his rights to straight back that one.
He needs to, and I'm sure like that he'll have been briefed like by the club. You know, Tony Barrett will say to him like, "You're going to get asked about this. This is the best way to approach it." So he'll be prepared for all that. Like,
good stuff. Okay, do you think you've covered everything that you wanted to get off your chest about this?
Yeah, I think so. As I say, there's like so many layers to it. Like, you know, it's a really difficult one to talk about because there's so many aspects. We still haven't even talked about, like, because we don't know. There's not really any point speculating, but why was it released now? The timing of it's like bizarre. Is it because he refereed us on Saturday? Have they been waiting until he was refereeing us? And, you know, why have they done it? Has he had a falling out with his mate? Has it got leaked to somebody else who's done it? That's something that, like, I think we'd all like to know. It doesn't. That's like, it's a subplot though. It doesn't change any of what happened. But your curiosity aspect of it now is like, well, why did they stitch him up like that? What's going on there?
If they're making the movie of it, that's a kind of key point, isn't it? Like you definitely want to know that. But one of the things that, I mean, whether it was the guy who filmed it or I'm sure it's not. I'm sure he would have passed that around. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but I just want to talk for a second about the guy who filmed it and what a fucking spectacular cunt that fella is. Like, that's how I imagine, like, posh southern British people to be. Like, very, very slight accent, vast fucking swathes of elitism, like, a hatred of shit that they don't understand. And I think that's kind of why we get such a, you know, like, there's that pervading, like, ignorant hatred of Liverpool and the city and Scousers, and I think that's why we kind of never get any support in any of these things, and people are happy to see us go down in flames, because that's the pervading narrative of cunts around the country. And I don't want to give him that much airtime really, because he's irrelevant to this really, but like, you know, in Lord of the Rings where like it's at the Council of Elrond and Aragorn comes up and goes, "You have my sword," and Legolas comes up and goes, "You have my bow," and Gimli comes in and goes, "You have my axe." And I just wanted, you know, if they came together and vowed to use them all on that guy's fucking face, then that would be fine by me. That's all I'll say.
The guy
Fucking
filming, or
cunt.
the one on the sofa next to him? Which one?
The one on the sofa next to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking absolute fucking vermin.
Yeah,
Like,
he's awful.
Oxygen thief.
He's a cricketer, apparently. Played for Knox.
That doesn't surprise me. Posh cunt.
Now he's working in America. And I read the Telegraph done something saying his employers are investigating him based on this. And I'm like, you can't sack him because he doesn't like Scousers and he doesn't like Jurgen Klopp.
They might want to piss test him, though.
Yeah, there is that, yeah. But,
that's what I'd be doing.
You know, this is not... He's entitled to act like a dickhead and say the things he said. He's entitled to do that. There's free speech. If he feels like that and that's what he wants to say, he can say it. There's no issue there. He didn't cross a line and talk about Hillsborough or anything like that. So, to me, it's not like his job should not be on the line for what he said in that video, as much as he looks like an absolute dickhead. Unless his boss is a Liverpool fan, that changes things completely. Imagine his boss is like a Scouse Liverpool fan. Yeah, he's done for. He's out the door. But this is what I'm saying about, like, you know, when people are saying that David Coote shouldn't be cancelled and, you know, we're too quick to do that these days and people deserve second chance. Everyone makes mistakes and stuff. That's not what this is. You know, you can't do that when you're in the job that he's in. Mm-hmm. There are consequences and repercussions for something like that. You know, you cannot say what he said in the line of work that you're in. The other guy can say it and his job shouldn't be at risk because of it. Because he's not refereeing Liverpool games and he's not having to deal with Jurgen Klopp. So there's a difference between the two, even though I think like the other guy comes across a lot worse than David Coote. That's not really the point. Like, David Coote's got a legitimate reason for hating Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp gave him like dog's abuse. Now it's the chicken and the egg thing. It's like, did Klopp give him abuse because he screwed us, or did he then start screwing us because Klopp had given him abuse at the end of the game? So we don't really know either way. But if Coote's like genuinely tried to referee that game to the best of his ability, and then he comes off the pitch and he's getting abused by Robbo and Trent and Klopp, and I understand why they're pissed off. So, you know, I'm not criticising them for that. But from a referee's point of view, if you're being subjected to that, of course you're going to think, I fucking can't stand these knobheads. And then if Milner said to him, like, you know, don't worry about it, like, good game, ref, or whatever, he's then going to be thinking, oh, Milner's all right. So I totally get, like, where he's coming from, but you cannot say what he said. You just can't do it. You've got to expect consequences if you say something like that.
Yeah, and just one last point on the mate. I was explaining on the forum yesterday that, like, in our jobs we all have these similar biases that you pick your moments with, and, you know, I said, put it this way, I fucking hate Elon Musk with every fibre of my being, but sometimes as a technology writer, when I have that hat on, I have to write about Twitter or SpaceX or whatever impartially, or whatever other bullshit he has his fingers in. I'll get the odd dig in every now and again, but it can't be like every word I write. And Mega Drive Man on the forum said, the difference is, though, the articles you write don't have any effect on the outcome of anything. And I'm like, man, that's a remarkably accurate assessment of my entire career to date, you know? Nice, man. You summed me up really well there, mate. So thanks for that. Oh, dear. We've still got 10 games before the next game to talk about. To talk about this, Dave. It's not going away anywhere soon, and hopefully there'll be some more developments. We hear a little bit more, and there's a little bit of progress before the Southampton game, and then we can get back to the good business of being 5 points clear at the top of the league, perhaps with a opportunity to extend it with a game against the bottom of the... Well, they're not bottom anymore, are they? Are they off the bottom now, Southampton? One at the weekend.
Yeah, they won, so they might be. Yeah, they might be off the bottom.
Right. Let's have a quick look.
But Wolves won as well. So maybe not.
Oh, no, they're still bottom. 4 points from 11 games.
Yeah.
Minus 14 goal difference. It's 4 points.
Everton got sucked back down into it, haven't they?
Oh, man, they're swirling again, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
And especially with, like, you know, Ipswich picking up a win, Palace winning, Southampton winning. They all won, didn't they? I think, no, Palace lost, but Ipswich won and Wolves won.
Palace won the week before, though, didn't they? To beat Tottenham, so... Yeah, they've all started picking up points now.
Yeah, they'll pick up a couple of wins against shite in a couple of weeks, you know, and then they'll bring themselves up to about 15th or 14th again and give themselves a little bit of cushion like they always do. But
Groundhog Day.
I'd be a little bit worried when I see, like, the teams around them picking up points, and I think Leicester have got too many good players to be down there, and I'm not, you know, maybe United will sink a little further down, but they've got they've got a decent coach now. So who knows?
Yeah, Van Nistelrooy's gone now, hasn't he?
Yeah.
That explains the long face. Do you remember that time when we were out in town and I was talking to that girl in O'Neill's and it was going really well, and then she goes, "You look like Ruud van Nistelrooy," and that was that. I was like, "What?" And she's like, "No, it's a compliment. I think he's really handsome." And I'm like, "No, go away. That's it. You've blown it now."
I do remember one night we were out though in the cabin, I think, on one of those Thursday night shindigs, and somebody said a girl said you look like Enrique Iglesias.
Yeah, I remember that as well.
Is Enrique the younger one?
He's not the fucking dad.
Yeah, you did a bit then when you had your short hair.
That was back when I was in my prime.
Yeah, man, that's going back a while.
See, there's a big difference between that and Ruud van Nistelrooy.
Yeah, there is. See, it's probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, I'd say.
Yeah. The fact that she meant it as a compliment, though, I'm like, no, you need to work on your game, love, because that's not good. It's like probably the worst thing she could have said to me at that time.
Oh man. All right. Well, I'm glad we got to end this on a more jovial note. We've probably gone a little bit longer than we intended to, but lots to cover there.
About half an hour longer than we intended.
Yeah, that's all right. You know, it's it'll give our listeners something to get through this long international break, even if it takes them 4 listens to do so.
Yeah.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done. I think so.
All right. Nice one. Well, as always, it's just fun to chat anyway, and we could probably go all morning, but. Until next time we catch you after the Southampton game, enjoy the rest of the international break. We might be back if there's some news on contracts. Don't hold your breath on that one, but until then, we'll catch you soon.